Happy learning.
Hi, welcome to our Pharma Topics channel. Our topic of our discussion is diuretics. Already I have posted a video related to diuretics. Since the students asked a more simplified version of diuretics, this video has been prepared. I tried to simplify as far as possible. So let us see the diuretics classification based on the site of action. First is thiazides. They act at the early distal convoluted tubule. And the next is loop diuretics. They act at the thick ascending limb of loop of Henle. And the next is potassium sparing diuretics. They act at the later part of the convoluted tubule. And next is osmotic diuretics. They act at the loop of Henle. And carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. They act at the proximal convoluted tubule. Let us see this classification in brief. One is high efficacy diuretics. They are furosemide, torsemide, bumetanide, pyritanide, and ithacranic acid. Then moderate efficacy diuretics. They are thiazides such as benzothiazides such as chlorothiazide, hydrochlorothiazide, bendroflumethiazide. And next is thiazide related diuretics. They are chlorthalidone, indapamide, zipamide, and metolazone. Next is low efficacy diuretics. They are potassium sparing diuretics such as triamterene, amiloride, spironolactone, and eplerenone. Osmotic diuretics such as mannitol, urea, and glycerol. And carbonic anhydrase inhibitors such as astazolamide, methazolamide, dorzolamide, and brinzolamide. Let us see the efficacy of these diuretics. This is thiazide diuretics, loop diuretics, potassium sparing diuretics, and carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. Here you can observe the volume of urine eliminated is very high when in case of loop diuretics. So they are called high ceiling diuretics. The volume of urine eliminated is less in case of potassium sparing diuretics and carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. So they are called weak diuretics. Thiazide diuretics are moderate diuretics. In all the cases, you can see sodium is lost. The loss of sodium is less in case of potassium sparing diuretics and carbonic anhydrase inhibitors, whereas it is very high in case of loop diuretics. Potassium loss happens with the thiazide diuretics, the loop diuretics, and in case of carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. The potassium lost is regained with the addition of potassium sparing diuretics to thiazides and loop diuretics. Carbonic anhydrase also causes bicarbonate loss. And apart from this, calcium is reabsorbed in case of uh, thiazides, whereas it is eliminated in case of loop diuretics. We will discuss these things in brief in the further slides. So we can compare the thiazide and loop diuretics in this slide. You can see the loop diuretics, they exhibit a dose-dependent diuresis. That means as the dose increases, the diuresis increases. Whereas the thiazides have a flat dose response curve. Even if the dose increases, the diuretic effect does not increase beyond a particular limit. So let us see the thiazides in brief first. Let us see the mechanism. So take this is a distal tubular cell, and whatever is going to get eliminated will be via urine. Whatever is going to get reabsorbed will be in the blood. So in case of the distal tubular cells, there is a symporter called sodium chloride symporter. So this symporter causes a reabsorption of sodium and chloride. So the reabsorbed sodium is taken back into blood by another enzyme called sodium potassium ATPase. Apart from this, potassium channels and chloride channels are also present. The thiazide diuretics, what they do, they inhibit the sodium chloride symporter in the distal tubular cell. That causes elimination of sodium as well as water. So sodium reabsorption into the blood is inhibited by the thiazide diuretics. This is the mechanism of action of thiazide diuretics. Let us see a brief note of thiazide diuretics. Most of the students, they have difficulty in writing what are the important points regarding thiazide diuretics or any other diuretics. So I thought we can give the important points such that it will be useful for their exam. Let us remember around 13 or 14 points which you can write in the exam. So the drugs in this group include bendroflumethiazide, chlorothiazide, hydrochlorothiazide, polythiazide, metolazone, indapamide, and trichlormethiazide. These drugs act by inhibiting sodium chloride symporter in the early distal tubule. Thiazides decrease the positive free water clearance without affecting the negative free water clearance. That means they decrease they don't affect the normal levels, they affect only the hypertensive levels. Thiazides have additional carbonic anhydrase inhibitory action. The sodium elimination effect, that is called a natriuretic effect of thiazides, reveal a flat dose response curve. Thiazides tend to reduce glomerular filtration rate, so they are contraindicated in renal failure. But there is one exception. Metolazone could be used in case of renal failure. These drugs gain access to the tubular lumen through the transporter called organic anion transporter in the proximal tubules. Polythiazide and trichlormethiazide are potent thiazides. Chlorthalidone is the longest acting thiazide. Indapamide has no carbonic anhydrase inhibitory action, but it has vasodilatory action. Because of this, it is a very good antihypertensive. Let us see the uses of thiazides. It's a first-line category drugs as antihypertensives, used to mobilize edema fluid in mild to moderate heart failure. Paradoxically, these drugs reduce the urine output in diabetes insipidus. Thiazides decrease the excretion of calcium in the kidney, so can be used for treatment of patients with hypercalciuria and recurrent calcium stones in the kidney. Let us see the adverse effects of thiazide diuretics. Hypokalemia, hypomagnesemia, hyponatremia, hyperglycemia can occur. So the thiazide diuretics are contraindicated in diabetes mellitus and hyperuricemia. So these drugs are contraindicated in gout, and dyslipidemia may also occur. That is disturbance of the lipid levels. Apart from this, let us see the drug interactions. Thiazides have lot of drug interactions with the digoxin. It increases the digoxin toxicity. It increases the lithium toxicity because it reduces the elimination of lithium, and also it when clubbed with the NSAIDs, they decrease the diuretic effect. So these 13 points could be used easily for your examination point of view. Let us see the adverse effects of thiazide diuretics with a picture. So let us take whichever is going to get eliminated in urine, whichever is going to get reabsorbed into the blood. So sodium, potassium and water are lost, whereas calcium is reabsorbed, uric acid is reabsorbed, and glucose is reabsorbed. So the blood volume decreases. So hyponatremia, hypokalemia and hypercalcemia, hyperuricemia, so they are contraindicated in gout. Hyperglycemia, so they are contraindicated in diabetes mellitus. Blood loss can lead, that is the volume of blood, when it reduces, it may lead to hypotension. Let us see a simple diagrammatic representation of thiazides. So thiazides reach the distal tubule, they bind to sodium chloride symporter or co-transport system and increases the excretion of sodium and chloride. Let us see the mechanism of action of loop diuretics. Let us take this is the thick ascending limb of loop of Kenle. So whatever is going to get eliminated via urine and whatever is going to get reabsorbed into the blood. We will see this. So there is a transporter called sodium 2-chloride and potassium transporter, which is present in the thick ascending limb of loop of Kenle. And sodium gets reabsorbed into the blood from the loop of Kenle via sodium potassium ATPase enzyme. So that reaches the blood, and water is also reabsorbed in the same fashion. When sodium is reabsorbed, water will get reabsorbed. Apart from this, it is having potassium channels and calcium channels in the tall. So this sodium and 2-chloride and potassium channel is inhibited by the loop diuretics. So what they cause? It causes loss of sodium and loss of water into the urine. So let us see the brief note of loop diuretics, which you can use for your examination point of view. So the drugs in this category include furosemide, torocimide, bumetanide, axocimide, pyritanide, trypamide, and mersallyl. These drugs act by inhibiting sodium potassium 2-chloride symporter, which is present in the thick ascending limb of loop of Henle. These diuretics have a maximum natriuretic effect. Natriuretic means sodium reabsorption effect, the sodium elimination effect than all other diuretics. So they are called high ceiling diuretics. These drugs are faster acting with a shorter duration of action. These drugs gain access to the tubular lumen through the same organic anion transporter, which is similar to thiazides. Loop diuretics decrease positive as well as negative free water clearance, whereas thiazides, they decrease only the positive free water clearance. Loop diuretics change the intrarenal hemodynamics, resulting in decreased absorption of sodium and water in the proximal tubules, which is mediated by the release of prostaglandins. Since glomerular filtration rate is not altered, loop diuretics are the diuretics of choice in the presence of moderate to severe renal failure. Furosemide possesses a vasodilatory action, which is responsible for quick relief in the left ventricular failure and pulmonary edema. Torocimide has the longest half-life. The main uses are to remove the edema fluid in renal, hepatic, or cardiac diseases. They are administered IV for prompt relief from acute pulmonary edema due to their vasodilatory action. These drugs cause excretion of calcium, therefore can be used for treatment of hypercalcemia. So let us see the drug interactions. More important is loop diuretics when they are clubbed with aminoglycoside antibiotics. It increases the ototoxicity. Let us see the simple diagrammatic representation of loop diuretics. So when they are given IV, one they have dual actions. One is diuresis, one is prostaglandin mediated vasodilation. So that leads to relief of pulmonary edema because the vasodilation increases the blood in the veins. Whatever the venous return to the heart increases, and that decreases the ventricular filling pressure because the veins can accommodate more blood. So the venous return to heart is reduced. So diuresis reduces the plasma volume. Put together, it relieves pulmonary edema. So let us see the adverse effects of loop diuretics in brief. So you remember a code: loop loses calcium, whereas thiazides reabsorb the calcium. So sodium, potassium, water, magnesium, calcium are eliminated in urine, whereas uric acid and glucose are reabsorbed into the blood. The blood volume decreases. So hyponatremia, hypokalemia, hypomagnesemia, hyperuricemia can occur. So contraindicated in gout. Hypovolemia can occur. This reduction in BP can lead to shock and cardiac arrhythmias. Hyperglycemia can occur. So similar to thiazides, these drugs are also contraindicated in diabetes mellitus. Apart from this, it causes ototoxicity. Loop diuretics can also cause dyslipidemia. Bumetanide is the most potent loop diuretic and produces less adverse effects than furosemide. Ethacrynic acid is highly ototoxic with steep dose response curve. Furosemide and bumetanide are sulfonamide structures, so they are contraindicated in patients who are having sulfonamide allergies. Let us see the mechanism of action of potassium sparing diuretics. So they act at the collecting duct. So whatever is going to get eliminated in urine, whatever is going to get reabsorbed into the blood. That is what we are going to see. The aldosterone, when it enters into the tubular epithelium of the collecting duct, it adds to mineralocorticoid receptor that causes the genetic changes in the DNA which releases some of the proteins that causes generation of protein channels, that is water channels. They are called aquaporins. So with this aquaporins and sodium is also reabsorbed and potassium is eliminated. So water is reabsorbed and taken back into blood, and sodium is exchanged with the potassium, and the sodium is also reabsorbed. So aldosterone antagonists and epithelial sodium channel inhibitors, which are all potassium sparing diuretics, block this aldosterone step. So water is lost in the urine and sodium is also lost in the urine. This is the mechanism of action of potassium sparing diuretics. So let us have a short note of epithelial sodium channel inhibitors. Two drugs are there in this category, amiloride and triamterene. Amiloride is the more potent and longer acting than triamterene. Lithium is absorbed through the epithelial sodium channel in the collecting duct, and at toxic doses it can cause diabetes insipidus. Amiloride is the drug of choice for this condition, which blocks the entry of lithium through these channels. Amiloride can also be used as an aerosol to decrease the secretions in cystic fibrosis. Amiloride decreases magnesium and calcium excretion and increases urate excretion. Let us see the aldosterone antagonists. They are spironolactone, canrenone, potassium canreonate, and eplerenone. These drugs act from the interstitial side of the site of the tubular cell, whereas all the other diuretics act from the luminal side. So this can be asked in the multiple choice questions for any competitive exams. So these drugs have maximum effect when aldosterone levels are high, which usually happens with hepatic cirrhosis, congestive heart failure, and nephrotic syndrome. They are used as a weak diuretic, so they are used in combination with thiazides or loop diuretics to counteract the potassium loss. They are used for in case of congestive heart failure, it can decrease the mortality. They are useful in hypertension and cirrhotic edema. In cirrhotic edema, the drug of choice is spironolactone. Spironolactone is used for treatment of hirsutism also. Adverse effects: spironolactone can cause gynecomastia and impotence. Eplerenone and spironolactone can cause hyperkalemia, abdominal pain, and aggravation of peptic ulcer. Drug interactions: potassium sparing diuretics with ACE inhibitors increase the potassium levels, so it may lead to hyperkalemia. Let us see a simple diagrammatic representation of potassium sparing diuretics. So spironolactone binds to aldosterone receptors in the distal tubule and collecting duct, and canrenone is a metabolite of spironolactone. Both of them inhibit the action of aldosterone. Both of them increase the sodium and water excretion and decrease the potassium excretion. Amiloride triamterene bind to ENaC, that is epithelial sodium channels in the distal convoluted tubule and collecting duct. So they cause sodium excretion and retain potassium. Let us see about osmotic diuretics. So mannitol, glycerol, isosorbide, and urea are inert. These are the drugs in this category. Loop of Henle is the major site of action of these diuretics. They increase the osmotic pressure in the blood vessels, so which increases the renal blood flow, increases the glomerular filtration rate, and causes diuresis. Mannitol is the drug of choice for glaucoma and cerebral edema. It can be used to maintain glomerular filtration rate in impending renal failure. Osmotic diuretics are preferred in prevention of cisplatin-induced nephrotoxicity, which is an anti-cancer drug due to the rapid diuretic action. They are contraindicated in cerebral hemorrhage because of increase in the intracranial tension, then pulmonary edema and acute renal failure and congestive heart failure. So these 6 points are very important when related to osmotic diuretics. Let us see the simple diagrammatic representation of osmotic diuretics. So mannitol, when it is given as IV, they have dual action, increases the plasma osmolality. So water is reabsorbed from the intracellular fluid to extracellular fluid, which increases the blood volume, increases the urine formation. On other hand, it is filtered by glomerulus, it is not reabsorbed. It increases the osmolality of the tubular fluid in the renal tract, So water is retained in the proximal tubule and descending limb of loop of Henle. Both of them put together, they increase the water diuresis. Let us see the carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. The drugs in this category include acetazolamide, dichlorphenamide, methazolamide, brinzolamide, and dorzolamide. These drugs are non-competitive but reversible inhibitors of carbonic anhydrase and inhibit the sodium reabsorption in the proximal tubule of nephrons. These drugs cause maximal potassium loss and can cause bicarbonate excretion leading to metabolic acidosis. So these drugs are less preferred as diuretics. Carbonic anhydrase inhibitors decrease the aqueous humor formation. So dorzolamide and brinzolamide are used as eye drops in case of glaucoma. They increase the seizure threshold in case of catamenial epilepsy, that is the epilepsy occurring during menstruation in women. These drugs alkalinize urine, so they are used for elimination of acidic drugs in case of poisoning. They are also used in case of acute mountain sickness, which is also called altitude sickness. Acetazolamide is a sulfonamide derivative and can cause bone marrow depression and hypersensitivity reactions. These drugs are contraindicated in hepatic diseases because these drugs cause reabsorption of the hydrogen ions. The elimination of hydrogen ions are reduced. So, in case of hepatic diseases, more ammonia is produced. So, ammonia usually combines with the hydrogen ions, forms ammonium ion in the urinary tract and gets eliminated. That step gets blocked. More ammonia is built, and that leads to hepatic coma. Let us see a simplified diagrammatic representation of carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. Acetazolamide binds to and inhibits the enzyme carbonic anhydrase in the proximal tubules, blocks sodium bicarbonate reabsorption, increases the excretion of sodium, potassium, and bicarbonate and water. So it's a very short nutshell information of diuretics. I hope it will be useful for you. Thank you for listening. Happy learning. Kindly share this to more of your friends. Kindly subscribe to our Pharma Topics channel for further updates. If you like this video, kindly press the like button. Thank you.